All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the third session of the YFP Fellowship Group. We're going to be a little light today, but the purpose of today is to go over the script your plan portion of this idea. So you all should have received in Mighty Networks the list of questions. Did everybody get a chance to see that? Got some head nods, got some shakes. Okay. If I can't see your face and you're on mute, I'm just going to assume you're agreeing with me wholeheartedly. If you're not, please speak up to tell me otherwise. So the way this is going to work, there's a thumbs up, thank you. So the way this works normally is we'll do these one-on-one, right? So we'll sit together and we'll have a real long heart-to-heart message. That's going to be a little more difficult today, but I kind of want to see what answers people were saying, what thoughts people have, and this may actually be a benefit to you because you can see some other people's ideas and that may shift the way you're thinking or tell you that you could try something that you hadn't thought of yet as we go. So any questions before we begin? Nope. All right. So first to check in, right? No issues with Right Capital? No nothing? No? Okay, so we're gonna answer these questions. We're basically gonna talk about how you feel about your future changing suddenly. We're gonna talk about what success looks like, and then kind of what that relationship with your finances look like. So the three questions. So everybody, you can either look on my screen here or you can look back at those notes that we had. If you took notes and wrote them down, those are good. If you didn't, that's totally normal. Most of our clients don't write down answers as we talk about these anyway. But I want you to imagine that you're financially secure, that you have enough money to take care of your needs now and in the future. How would you live your life? What would you do with the money? Would you change anything? Let yourself go. Don't hold back on your dreams, and describe a life that is complete and richly yours. So does anybody want to share what they had for this? Love it. Okay. So a lot of the things that we hear, hey, thanks, Steve. So we're talking about just kind of the life questions I sent out. Did you get those in Mighty Networks? Yeah, just shake your head. It's fine. I'm going to assume you said yes. All right. So a lot of things we'll hear a lot of times is, hey, I want to spend more time with my family and I want to take care of them, right? If I had unlimited everything, I really want to take care of my family. That could be traveling with them more. I want to buy my parents that house. If I have children, I want to be able to watch them grow up and really enjoy that time. Travel is huge, right? We work with younger clients generally, so travel is kind of that big thing. Obviously, it's not in the year 2020 because no one's traveling anywhere, but that desire to knock those things off your bucket list or your true life list. So that the true life list would be that list of things to prove that you truly did live. So work less, retire by whatever age they want to say. Oddly enough, most pharmacists that we talk to, if I told them, hey, they're financially independent and they don't have to work anymore, they'd still say, I'd probably still work a little bit. Maybe I'd go PRN and I'd just work a little bit less, but I'd still do something. One, because either I really enjoy the work, I enjoy my coworkers, I need something to do, otherwise I'd go crazy is a really common one. We hear a lot of times, I want to make an impact. So that could be in the community, that could be on the healthcare system, that could be in the world in general. Some people, they're creating new fields in pharmacy, right? Some people want to go across and give to those who are less fortunate. But any of this striking a chord? I'm seeing a lot of nods. Does anybody want to share now? There's no requirement to share here. I'm going to keep talking whether or not you share, so. That's all right. So, and then we talk about like, hey, I want to do whatever makes the kids happy. So this is, when we do these scenarios, we really find out what comes out in people's lives. So when we're talking about all these questions that we're going to cover today, it's really digging for what's important. When we build a financial plan, and when you build your own financial plans, it's easy to just pick out some numbers and say, hey, this is what you need to do to retire at 65. Hey, this is what you needed to do to make sure you're taking advantage of your 401k through work. But it's really to find out what's important to you and what your dreams are, right? So the average everyday plan only works for the average everyday person, and that's not you. I told you guys last week, you're special. So we really want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. So I want to do whatever makes the kids happy. Golf, racing cars, travel, baseball, whatever they want to do. Success means having a boat. So one of our clients told us specifically, if you have a boat, you're successful. And that's what it was, and that's what it is. He's like, when I can get a boat, then I'm happy. Just a pontoon boat though, nothing fancy, doesn't need to be nothing too crazy. I told that to somebody and they argued that having a pontoon boat wasn't successful. Having a tri-toon, which I did not know was a thing, it's just a 3 pontoon boat, that was when you were successful. So, all right, so I'm gonna ask another question here. So this time you visit your doctor who tells you that you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good part is that you won't ever feel sick. The bad news is that you have no notice of the moment of your death. What will you do with the time you have remaining to live? Will you change your life, and how will you do it? Now, this question is a little bit different because it doesn't assume you have unlimited wealth, right? It's in your current financial situations, which you're all 2020 grads. So your current financial situations are not super awesome. But if I told you had 5 to 10 years left to live, kind of what are some of the things that jump out to you that you'd want to do, or that you'd want to change, or that you'd want to live? Anybody want to share?
I'll share.
There we go.
So I think if I only have 5 or 10 years left to live, I'll probably try to take more risks. I'm not a person who likes to take risks normally, but I really want to start an event planning business at some point. And so I will probably do that.
What kind of events?
Well, I planned my own wedding, and even though it was so stressful, I really enjoyed it. And I also like to design, like, I dabble in calligraphy. So I want to have like wedding stationery, like the whole event planning thing, help out with photography, all of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually had a friend who started wedding planning on her own. So a friend needed help with a wedding, so she just went to do it. And then her bridesmaid had a wedding, and she's like, "Oh, ask this person." She did mine, and then she's like, "Yeah, I'll charge you $500." And then she realized that was way not enough money to plan a wedding. So the next time she's like $700, and then the financial planner over here is like, "You really need to like get some value out of your money." But that's cool. Yeah, like taking more risk, reaching for that thing that you really want to do. If I only have so much time left to live, like I really want to make sure I'm utilizing it to the fullest. So if it's taking risks, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
I probably would not be doing a residency if I only had 5 to 10 years, because I think like I really would like it to kind of help like launch me off on my eventual long-term path. And I just think it's a lot of time and energy invested in like working, where if I had like a finite amount of time, I think I would rather spend it with people that, you know, my family and friends, and like doing things, maybe just still working, but maybe with a little bit more balance in there.
Yeah, I think we hear that a lot actually, is I want to get to doing the thing, right? You spent a fair amount of time learning about this job, all the schooling you did before that. So going and doing a residency just kind of just delays that one step farther. So if you're living on a finite timeline, like let's get to it. Let's do this thing. So yeah, I think that's an awesome way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think a big thing for me would be making sure I don't leave my family behind with debt and stuff like that too.
Yeah, that is a huge topic normally, is doing whatever it takes to make sure that your loved ones are provided for. So we actually, I hear this from both sides of the clients. A lot of times we'll hear if they come from a background that's really well off, they're not worried about their family. If they come from a background that's less well off, or if their family just has other needs, right, like sisters or brothers or anything, I want to keep working so I can leave things behind, or I want to make sure I have the right insurance policies in place to make sure people are behind. If I have kids or if I have spouses, I want to make sure that they're prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, everything, right? But a fun one that I've heard recently was, normally people say, "Hey, I want to make go travel more, right? I'll work for X amount of time, and then I want to just travel after that," right? It's like, hey, if I have 5 to 10 years left to live, I'll work for the next 5 years, and then I'm just going to travel for whatever time I have left and really enjoy that remainder. The best response I had recently was the client who said, I would live this next 5 years. Like I wouldn't work if I could afford it. I would just travel and do everything I can for the next 5 years. And then after that, I just go back to regular life. Like, because who knows if I'm actually going to die? I'm on borrowed time at that point. Let me just work like it was the rest of forever and just go back to having a normal day job. But these questions now are starting to get to like, what's really important to you, right? Hey, I want to make sure my family is taken care of. That's really valuable. Hey, I want to make sure I'm living a life that I want to live and I'm taking those risks that I've not been able to take previously. Hey, I want to make sure that I'm actually doing the good work that I've trained for and I've wanted to get to. So that's really important. So when we go through the financial planning, we're talking about stuff, you can look back at these answers and say, how is this decision go back towards my real goals? Not how does it help me do this? Not how does it help me get more money in the bank? How does it actually push me towards the goals that I talked about earlier and the real point in your life? Thanks for sharing so far. So yeah, work less, focus on family relationships. Travel is always going to be super common with the age demographic that we work with. Okay, so this one gets a little darker. This is normally where people start to cry. I don't expect that today, but if you do, I cry with you. We'll party out. So this time, your doctor shocks you with the news that you have only one day left to live. Notice what feelings arise as you confront your very real mortality. Ask yourself, what dreams will be left unfulfilled? What do I wish I had finished or had been? What do I wish I had done? And what did I miss? Right, so this question is not focused on, how are you living that last day? Because I think for most people, it's going to fall into a combination of fuck, cry, eat. Like in some order and in some proportion. You're going to want to eat your last meal. You're going to want to cry it all out. And you're going to want to love something. So that's kind of that. So this is not that last day. This is regrets almost. This is looking back and saying, what do I really wish I had done? What did I waste my time? What did I do that? When y'all read this the first time, or when you heard it the first time here, does anything jump out to y'all? Anybody want to share?
I basically just thought there'd be no legacy to leave behind. I mean, just graduating and stuff. I mean, yeah, we graduated pharmacy school, but we haven't really done anything besides that. You have all these goals, but that never gets to happen if you just die.
Yeah, that's a good point. You spent the time, the work effort to get to where you're at, but you haven't actually done any of that stuff yet. So that sucks that you didn't get to do that sooner. Not a lot you can control on the most part of that. Like school takes school time, but not being able to get there. Anybody else got something to share? That's all right. I think some of the ones we get a lot of times, especially when couples do this, you'll hear things like, man, I'd be really sad that I never had kids. If that's something that's important to you. Other people would be really sad that I never got to get married. If you have kids, I didn't get to see them grow old. Hey, I'm really sad that I never got to go to this part of my career that I wanted to get to. Either I really wanted to mentor others, like I was able to get mentorship when I was young. I really want to be able to pass that on. I'd be sad that I didn't get to do that I didn't get to share that with others, that I didn't get to pass along the knowledge that I'm just now starting to pick up. Those are normally some pretty big topics. And sometimes they don't have to be big, right? I'm not here saying everything has to be a huge goal. One of my clients would be really sad that they didn't have a Lotus, which is a sports car. They just wanted a sports car. They'd be really sad they never got that sports car. The whole reason they became a doctor was to afford a Lotus, and they weren't going to get it. So it doesn't have to be, all lovey-dovey, big, huge dreams. Sometimes you can just do whatever's important. So something to focus on. So family first, I'd be distraught that I didn't get to watch my kids grow up. I'm a mom more than anything else. Life events, I miss out on major milestones, getting married, having kids, traveling together as a family, and then pursuit of hobbies. We had a client that really wished they would have pursued powerlifting more. So everybody's got their own goals, and this is just, again, reverting back to that. So every step we take forward is, how does this help me do those things that I didn't get to do? And what this question is meant to do is to bring back that focus. So if you would have been regretful that you didn't get to do a thing, let's make sure we're taking steps towards that now rather than putting it off even farther. So when that day does come, you don't still have those same regrets. All right, so now we'll change it up here a little bit. So now we'll talk about, what does success look like in the future? So with a lot of our clients, timelines are huge, right? You spent the last 20 something years in school basically, or getting ready for school. So the timelines are really weird. You're shifted a little bit. So if I just look out into the future and I say, 2 years from now, what does success look like? And people define success in several different ways, right? So some people will define success physically, spiritually, professionally, emotionally, relationship-wise, right? Socially. So I'm going to ask y'all, 2 years from now, what does a successful version of yourself look like? Anybody want to share?
You have a preference, personal, professional, or financial, or all the above?
Whatever you want to share, man. There's really no like right or wrong answers here. It's really just whatever you think would be successful. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've seen there's a TikTok video of a woman who comes back in time and talks about like coronavirus. Like if you talk to your future self and you're just like, man, that person is successful.
So I basically was just saying in 2 years, I'd like to be maxing out my retirement benefits, hopefully starting a family, and hopefully, making strides towards the big money goals, like buying a house, buying land, buying a pharmacy, and hopefully being able to kind of see that in the near future.
So 2 years from now, a successful version of Austin is you want to be making progress. You want to be making those steps to get to those big goals, right? You're not going to be there yet for a lot of them, but you want to be making sure you're on the right path.
Right.
I think that's a great step. Anybody got anything else for 2 years? Yeah, so 2 years is the hard one, right? 2 years is just around the corner. So a lot of times we'll hear things like, not that much different than today. Or, maybe I'll have that raise. Maybe I'll have that promotion. Or if something's really big on your mind, it'd be like, I'm going to be in a new house. Or I will have a dog and that dog's name will be Dwight. I don't know what he looks like or this and that, but I know I have a dog and I know his name is Dwight. And it'll be in less than 2 years. Having these conversations with your significant others, if you have some, are really important too. So that way you're headed in the same direction, right? If you in 2 years want to be settling down and your significant other in 2 years wants to be a digital nomad, meaning they work virtually and can live anywhere, that's really important to know the differences of. If in 2 years you want to be working towards that pharmacy manager or director position or assistant director position, you need to let your supervisors know that that's the track you want to be on, right? Steven, you got something for me?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, my wife and I, we talked about it would just be nice after 2 years to kind of have an idea of where we want to settle, and hopefully at that point, like, be with a company or like, I mean, you change jobs a lot, right? But like, have a little bit of stability. Haven't had a lot of stability as like being students, right? Just moving apartment and just being poor. So it would be nice, like at the 2 year mark, residency's over. I have no interest in doing a PGY2. So like residency's over, it's been a year, and like hopefully at that point, if I was gonna stay on with this company, I stayed on. If I wasn't, I'm with another company, and we're just like kind of getting an idea of like what state we're gonna settle, like where our kids are gonna go to school, like because right now, like I don't even know what 10 years will look like, right? But at least at the 2 year mark, it'd be nice to kind of get an idea of like, oh yeah, like hopefully we're with the same company, from this point on for at least a couple years, and like just to get a little bit more stability at the 2 year mark. Like we still won't know a lot of stuff, but because things will be better, like financially, and we'll have a better sense of like what we want to do with our lives is kind of what we talked about.
Yeah, I think that stability is that huge thing to focus on, right? You've been in school, now you're making that huge shift where you're going from training every day, making maybe nothing while I'm working in school, maybe making a very little bit, to am I in a resident now? Am I going to go PGY2? Am I finishing that up? Am I working full-time at a pharmacy somewhere? But finally getting to that point where like life is starting to settle. Like you've had delayed gratification for a long time. You've been in school, you've been putting things off. Now you're going to get out there. Within the next 2 years, you're hopefully going to start to get that settled feeling where you know how much money you're going to have. You know where you're going to want to end up. You're starting to feel what that company is going to look like. You may not be there yet, right? I may not know exactly where I'm going to be, but I can start guiding that in and say, you know what? I know where I don't want to be, and I can start ruling some stuff out. And that's almost just as valuable as knowing where you're going to be as knowing where you're not going to be. But getting towards that stability is really important, I think. Thanks for sharing. So the next one will be like 5 years. What does 5 years from now look like, right? Now, when we do this, it becomes this sequential thing, right? So we have to stack that. So if at 2 years, I was making that progress to get towards those bigger goals, if I was finding that stability that I was hoping for, that I was looking for, when I get to 5 years and I look back, like what's the successful version of me 5 years from now? Anybody got something they want to share? Any of our hidden callers want to chime in?
I want my student loans to be paid off in 5 years.
You want your student loans to be paid off in 5 years? Okay. How much do you have in student loans?
Too much.
We're gonna find out next week or next.
Like 100, like just under 150.
Okay. So for you to pay off student loans in 5 years, that means you're making, $35,000 a year's worth of payments. So you can pay that off with interest because interest works. Yeah. That's a cool thing to say, right? To say, hey, in 5 years, I want this paid off. Now, I'll look at Tim Church. So Tim Church is one of our owners. He's a full-time pharmacist at a VA in Florida. Him and his wife were able to pay off $400,000 of loans in 5 years. So whatever situation you find yourself in, there is somebody who has been through more and done more, right? So if you make that a pillar of your financial goals, then that's doable. That's totally doable, right? It sounds crazy to say you got to pay off $35,000 a year, but if you get a job where you're making 100, right? After taxes even, that still leaves me 65 to live off of. I've definitely lived off 65 for more than or less than that in the previous years. So I can find $35,000 to do that if that's a financial pillar. So saying that's totally inbounds. Now, some people here would say, definitely don't want to do that. Like maybe I'm going for forgiveness. But if that's one of your goals, I want to do that, do that. And I'm very supportive.
Out of curiosity, did Tim have kids?
Tim Church has no kids. No, he has no kids. So it was just him and his wife, and they were able to live off one income. He put a podcast on out. If you go to our YFP podcast, I wish I knew the number offhand, but I don't. Also, today's podcast was me, by the way, if you give that a listen. So yeah, it was just him and his wife, and they were able to live off one salary. They were able to forego almost everything. So they didn't buy new cars. They didn't buy a house yet. They didn't do anything. They would occasionally spoil themselves just to keep it up going. But yeah, 4 years or 5 years, 400,000. So.
And sorry, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but when he did that, did he just rent the whole time or did he try to purchase during that time?
They rented the whole time. They're looking at purchasing now.
Okay.
Everyone.
That's because I hear a lot of cool stories, but for me, the caveat is always like, I feel like they don't have kids.
Yeah.
When they're really accelerated, and I have 2 kids.
It's always going to be easier when you have less of them.
Yeah.
So whatever those variables are, when you have less of them, it's going to be easier. So yeah, with 2 kids, it's going to be harder because cutting spending for just you or just you and your wife is one thing, but telling a child or having a child cut spending is a little different.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So yeah, understandable. Carol, you got something for me, or you just wanted you want to join the party?
Sorry, I was so late. I was trying to find the link. I kept searching by YFP, and when I searched by your name, I found it. I guess success for me, I jumped in on the loans, paying those off, but I am one of those people you mentioned in the first meeting who would love to career switch sooner rather than later. So 5 to 10 years, I hope to be going back to school to become a elementary school teacher, which is my original goal.
Yeah.
Very, very opposite of pharmacy, I know, but that's my goal.
No, party on. I think that's great. I think like having that ability to like see that future and say, 5 years from now, I want to be working towards that next thing. I made this choice. I went into this career. I don't think it's for me anymore. Let me move. I can identify it. I can make a path. I can make a corrective measure, and let's move towards it, right? And if you're a public school teacher, you're going to be on PSLF, so you can just ignore all your student loans anyway. So let's just give me some more. But that's cool. I think saying 5 years from now, I want to be on that track. Everybody's goals are going to be different. And it's really what's important. That's cool. All right. So then the next one is 10 years, right? So we did 2 years, pretty much the same, just making progress, looking for stability. 5 years, maybe some big things have changed. You know, maybe we've paid something off. Maybe we've bought that house. Maybe we settled down and got married. Maybe we have kids, maybe not. 10 years is really far out, right? So if you're 28 now, you're 38. If you're 30 now, you're 40. People always freak out when I say these numbers, but they're just data. It's just numbers, right? So 10 years from now, what does a successful version of you look like? Anybody got any big stuff out there? This is going to be more obscure and more obtuse, but.
So I basically just said I'd like to have multiple stores, and I'd like for the wood shop that's currently run out of my garage to be self-sufficient, to where I'm not just the only employee. So hopefully in the future, we get to where it's making money without me being there. Would be a goal.
When you say multiple stores, you had said earlier you're talking about purchasing pharmacies.
Right.
So
Like
you have multiple pharmacies.
mm-hmm.
So that happens somewhere in the 2 to 10 year range. So we're growing that up.
Well, I'm lucky in my work I'm in now that I kind of have the opportunities, if they arise in the next like 5 years, to get in on a store. And then I'd be part of a partnership, which hopefully would lead into other opportunities later on. So not necessarily just me by myself, but part of kind of a group.
And then a wood shop, what do you make?
I make mostly cutting boards because they sell the best. But I've done anything from farmhouse tables to cutting boards, butcher blocks, breadboards, floating shelves. Really pretty much whatever somebody will buy, I'll build.
There you go. Are you doing the like solid wood, or are you doing like the little pieces that you glue together to make those cool patterns?
Both. Like some of them, got a couple. Like this would just be a breadboard, just oak and stuff, and this is just a walnut board. But the big seller
This is awesome.
would be the Oklahomas and stuff. That's out of multiple pieces of board.
Yeah,
But it's just time.
that's cool. Yeah, I think that's a cool goal. Like, hey, I want to be making big swings. I want to have a couple stores that are growing. I want to have my side hobby, right? My profession in my garage to be self-sustaining, and be able to run maybe with some other workers, maybe not out of my garage if not necessary. Or you maybe just get a bigger garage. Maybe you just go the DiResta route and you just have a much bigger place.
That's what the pharmacy job's for.
Pharmacy job funds the lumber yard.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think like that, getting multiple stores. I mean, we have a client who recently joined a partnership like that. And they just added 4 new stores within a year of her joining a partnership. Right. So like those things can exponentially grow when you get the right partners together. So if that's something that you want to do, kind of just put it out there in the universe, let people know that's what you're working towards, and things will generally fall into place if you give it enough time and work ethic. But who else has got something for 10 years? What's another big 10-year goal that you got? You want to see yourself successful?
My wife and I had talked about like our loan payment plan is probably not as aggressive as other people's for like a variety of reasons, but we talked about at the 10-year mark, hopefully like we're at least seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of like, we don't really have it planned out. I mean, I guess this is what this course is for, but hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is in sight at the 10-year mark. And we're starting to think about, if we haven't already, like kind of the principles of this course, but how can we build equity in other places besides our income? So hopefully we'll have been putting into our 401k at this point and doing all that stuff. But I've always wanted to get into like property and hopefully at that point in our lives, like if we haven't already, we have the bandwidth and the finances and things like that so that we can start making those excursions into that field to kind of prep ourselves for the next 10, 15, 20 years, where it would be nice, the end goal being like, I just work for fun, right? It's not because I just like work. It's not because I have to pay off loans or like support my kids. I work as a pharmacist, and if I quit for whatever reason, I would have income. So like at the 10-year mark, we'd be trying to set ourselves up for that, was what we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think, you heard Allison has the 5-year plan to pay off her student loans. You want to be at, like in sight at 10 years. You may or may not be there depending on variables unknown, but at least at 10 years, I wanted to know that we see the light at the end of the tunnel, is your words. I like that. And then we're setting ourselves up for that future financial independence, getting to that point where I don't have to work anymore. A lot of you are going to continue to work no matter what because you may enjoy it, but some people won't. And they'll want to get to a point where they're just burnt out and they just want to stop working, or they want to spend more time with their kids. And I mean, you'll have teenagers by then. So you'll definitely want to do time with sports. You're going to be like a baseball, soccer, gymnastics dad. Like, what are we doing? And you want to be there, right? So having that ability to set yourself up towards that is really valuable. And doing that, thinking about that now, right? Especially with couples, like you're married, but like if y'all are just dating somebody, like it's hard enough to talk about where you're going to be next year. Like, can I plan a trip for us together 6 months from now? Because I don't know if we're going to be together. I have a friend who has a wedding that got postponed. Are you still going to be my date for that kind of thing? Is important. So having these long-term thoughts, at least with yourself, at the very least, is really important to kind of shoot yourself in that right direction. Because you gotta have a goalpost to aim at, right? And if you don't at least say, hey, at 10 years, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, student loans may start to fall off from the necessity, right? Other expenses are going to pop up and say, I really want to make extra student loan payments, but I got this HBO Max just came out. I really need HBO Max. I don't know if they had that new show or that new trip. Like, hey, we didn't get to do any trips in 2020. I really want to take that big trip in 2021. I'll just take that extra payment I was going to make to student loans, right? And you start to rob yourself. But if you keep that goalpost in sight and you say, hey, this is the thing that we're shooting for, then you're going to be in a much better place. But you got to have it in the first start. So thanks for sharing. Anybody else got a 10-year? Nope. All right. The last one we normally talk about with clients is 30 years, right? So the comparison I'll say here, because most of our parents probably had us when they were like somewhere between like 20 and 40. So like, how old are your parents? Or how old would your parents be if they're not around? And say, what do you want your life to look like when you get to that age, right? So my dad is 62. What do I want my life to look like when I get to be my dad's age? And hopefully less mustache and less belly, like to start, right? So what does that tell me? That means I got to stay fit and I got to maintain a razor. My dad's got a big old fat mustache that I'm not allowed to have. And then I got to stay fit, right? I want to make sure I stay healthy through this time frame, right? But also my parents are terrible with money, which is maybe why I care about it so much. So I want to make sure that I'm not in the position that they're in, right? I don't want to have to be worried if I'm ever going to be able to retire. I don't want to have to worry that I'm going to be a burden on my kids. I don't want to have to worry about what's going to happen, this, that, or the other. And I don't want to be embarrassed that I may not be able to provide for my adult children or grandkids the way that other people would, right? That's something that my parents are going through right now. So how can I set myself up today to make sure I'm on that path, right? So Stephen mentioned something at 10 years, like, hey, maybe we're getting to that point where we're saving heavily for retirement, right? So that's that big 30-year time frame. So what does 30 years look like? Maybe somebody here wants to have a Lotus 30 years from now. But like, what is that 30 years? Anybody got something out there?
Honestly, mine is pretty simple. I just want to be healthy when I'm in my 50s, because like working at a hospital right now, like that's all I see is just these people who are really way too young to be in the hospital for something so serious. And I just don't want to be like that, especially with pharmacy being kind of a demanding job, both mentally and physically. That's really how I define success in 30 years.
I think that's huge. I think health is a really big one. It sucks when you work at a hospital because you don't generally see healthy people. So you start to get this picture that everybody who's old is unhealthy. I get a skewed perspective too, because we work with clients that are generally wealthy. So I just assume everybody's got more money than me, which is obviously not the case. But you see that, right? And you want to make sure you get there. So that just kind of reminder. And if you have these goals and you think about this, and you don't have to think about it all the time. You don't have to plan for how fit I'm going to be, that fit grandma, fit grandpa that everybody's got. I want to be that old dude who's still working out on the beach. But like, just to kind of revisit that every once in a while and just think, how am what I'm doing now going to impact those future goals that we talked about? What am I doing today that's actually going to get me towards those goals? Of being in shape when I'm in my 50s, or being able to retire, or being able to take my family on big trips, right? So what am I doing today that's actually going to help me get to that way? And if I have a big decision, does this get me closer or farther from that? Anybody else got a 30-year? That's all right. Kim, you got any 30 years? I can call you out, Kim.
I don't know. I have issues with these questions because I'm very like, I don't know, like mortality doesn't bother me. So like, I don't think out like success long term, if that makes any sense at all.
Yep. It does. And not everybody has to have an answer. Like that's a good point. I mean, Kim does this with clients all the time and she doesn't even really know kind of what she wants that 30 years to look like, but just kind of to think about it is the value, right? Just to have some kind of thought towards it. So some of the common stuff that we'll hear about, right? So social, professional, financial, those are kind of like the three big pillars, but whatever pillars are important to you are kind of what we get. So, hey, I want to be married, or I want to be on track for kids in the home. I want to be settled, right? That's that. I want to have that security. I want to have that. I want to be settled. Let's stick with there. I want to be in my dream home. A lot of times we'll have clients that say, you know, I'm in a house right now, I'm renting, or we just bought, and it's a starter, but I want that dream home, right? Maybe that dream home is on a couple acres and I can do sustainable farming. Maybe that dream home is across the street from work so I can ride my bike or I can walk. Or maybe it's next to a playground or an elementary school for your kids. Or maybe it's in that right school district that you're not in just yet. I want to have my family, parents and kids be happy, right? I want to have that. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Common professional goals, still working, but not full-time. That could happen at any age range. Everyone's cool, still working, but not full-time. You have reached X position, right? If you really want to hit that director goal, or if you want to be a pharmacy manager, or you want to be the administrator of a hospital, like you got to let that know early because you got to start getting on that track and getting with the right mentors and supervisors. Maybe you want to be able to help more people. So you want to be in a bigger system or a different area, or you want to be going overseas and doing, you know, Doctors Without Borders kind of stuff. Common financial goals are student loans are halved by a certain date. I want to make sure my student loans are below this by a certain date. I want to pay that off. I want to have no other debt other than my mortgage at a certain date, right? So that's, you know, effectively debt free. I want to be more financially secure and able to start enjoying our lives without monthly payments, right? I just want to get to that point where I'm not having to worry about monthly payments anymore. Like that should be somebody's early goal. Like 2 years from now, I want to not have to worry about paying bills. Like bills are just going to get paid and I don't have to worry about them, right? That's a achievable goal for everybody here, but that's some of the common stuff. All right, so then major purchases in the next 5 years. So we talked about kind of big changes in our life. We talked about what the future would look like in a successful world, but now we still have to talk about today, right? So I say this all the time. You guys have been through a lot of delayed gratification, right? You've been putting off to get to where you are. And now it's time. You probably feel that in your heart. You feel that in your soul. You feel that in your feet. When you step into old shoes, you feel that in your seat when you get into the old car. Like it's time for me to have things. Now, I don't want anybody to go crazy outside where their means are, but your means are increasing now, right? Your ability to purchase things has increased and will increase farther as you continue through this profession. So, or less. Carol, if you go back and be a school teacher, there's not going to be as much money there. So what major purchases do y'all see in the next, 2 to 5 years? Anybody got a big purchase that they want to plan for that that you should be aware of and you start tracking towards, right? So a lot of times we'll have like, oh, I'm going to buy that new Tesla. Maybe it's the Tesla truck. You really want to drive that ugly looking thing. Maybe it's that house. Like, hey, I want to buy, I'm tired of renting. I've been moving around for so long. I want to settle down and buy a house. Maybe it's that big vacation, but like, what are some big things that y'all have that you need to start saving for in the short term so you'll be ready when they get here? It's okay. You don't have to share it once. I'll take turns.
I know for me, Ashley, one big purchase I'm looking forward to is I want to do a tiny house and make it very sustainable. So also getting like those solar panels and stuff like that for it.
Tiny house. So when you're thinking tiny house, is that like dropping a Connex in somewhere or you're building out of wood? Connex is like a shipping container.
Well, I was thinking of making it more travel friendly. So like on the little trailer.
Oh, Yeah.
or even like amplifying or re-innovating and stuff like that, like a scamp trailer or something. And
That's really
so
cool. That's really cool. Yeah. I had a friend make a short bus into a house.
that's awesome.
So it wasn't like a short school bus. It was one of those like old folks home buses, and they turned it into like a little tiny home that they can drive around, like a little RV. But those are awesome. Yeah. Making it much more sustainable. I mean, you could turn those into like biodiesel fuel run. You'll just drive around smelling like French fry grease. Definitely a thing.
But yeah, also to go with that, like land in different states and stuff like that around the country would be cool. Those little things like that.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Do you know what that would cost you?
I'm still trying to price things out. It really depends on if I could find things secondhand and things like that.
Yeah. So I think, go ahead.
So I'm hoping like I can do it like for at least like 12 grand or something, even cheaper and stuff like that. Because I have family members that can help me build stuff too. So
That helps a lot.
all hands on deck kind of thing.
I think one of the coolest thing when you plan something out like that, like if you say a couple years in advance, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, like putting it out in the universe always helps, because then you can hear about somebody who's getting rid of something, get some secondhand stuff that way. But also it helps you figure out of, should I start with a price tag and count backwards to what I need to be saving monthly? Or should I start with what I can afford monthly and start building up to see how long I have to wait to get that thing, right? So if you're going to say, hey, I think this is going to cost me, let's call it 10 to 15. You said 12, I'll say 10 to 15. I need to be saving $1,000 a month and I can get this next year. I can save $2,000 a month and I can get this for Christmas. Or is it, hey, I can only save $500 a month in my current budget, so I'm going to save that $500 a month. It's going to take me 2.5 years to get there. But now I'm ready 2.5 years to do that thing, right? With a tiny home that you're building, there's a lot of variability in that, right? So like maybe I get a cheaper frame for the trailer or the truck, and I can go from there. Or maybe I spend a little bit more on something and or on the renovations, right? I get a cheaper frame, so now I can get a full-size bathroom in a tiny home, because that's where I want my shower to be the best. Or maybe I'm able to get something that is somebody else's starter project they never finished, and a lot of the work's done, so I can spend money elsewhere. That's really important. If you're looking at, we had some other people chat in, a car or a house, right? So again, you start from either, this is what I want. I want that Tesla. It costs $37,000 after my rebates from the government. I need to save this much money so I can get it this year or next year. Or I need to do my whole budget first and say, this is what I have left over. This is what I'm going to save. Whenever I get to that point is when I buy it. That's really important. So tiny home, that's cool. Awesome. Kim pointed out that there's like little tiny home communities you can live in. So you guys can all like share stories and do all that and prop it up. Anybody else got a major purchase they want to share? That's all right. Well, thank you so far. All right. So then what does a successful relationship with your finances look like? So everybody has their own kind of backstory and history with money, right? So some people call it a money script and say, this is what my mind has been telling me about money, whether I hate money, I love money, it's a tool, it's a crutch, it's the worst thing ever, or it's the best thing ever, right? What is a successful relationship look like? How do I get to where I'm utilizing this thing to achieve what I want, right? Do I need to be a millionaire to feel successful with money? Do I need to just be able to survive? What level of comfort do I think is necessary with my funds? Okay, so the first place to start there is what currently stresses you out about your finances, right? This is one of those things where everybody knows what stresses them out, but nobody sits there and like talks about it. You don't tell people what stresses you out about money because money is a taboo topic, right? Well, money's not a taboo topic here. So what stresses you out about your finances right now? For me, I'll tell you, I'll start this. Before I joined Your Financial Pharmacist, I started my own company. It was FP Guidance, Financial Planning Guidance, real cool name, yeah. And I have a spouse who could pay for everything. We could live off one income for a while, and that was fine. And I thought that I'd be fine with that. But what I found, what really stressed me out was my inability to provide became an issue. And I started to get really stressed out that I wasn't able to add to our team effort, right? And that really started to stress me out over time. So even people, like, I live in the finance world and I still get stressed out by finances. So what stresses you out right now that we can hopefully, through this process or just through conversation, can kind of ease up a little bit?
I can go. I get a little stressed out by kind of the idea that like you grind and grind and grind for so long to get this job where you're at the point where you're making a salary. And then you feel like in order to make some of your goals, you're still going to need to be frugal with your money and like not having that gratification right away, especially like doing a residency program, for me is a little bit just frustrating and stressful.
Yeah. So I want to start by, I recently learned that when someone tells you a problem, I don't always have to try to give them a solution. I learned that from my wife recently. But here's the thing. Yeah. So you like that, Stephen? So a big one is, I had to be poor while I was in school. And then now that I finally have this job, I feel like I still have to be poor to get the things that I wanted. I thought the job was going to give me the things that I wanted. I didn't know that I still had to be poor. And what that really comes down to is like racking and stacking your priorities, right? And just deciding what is most important. I don't tell everybody that they need to go out and live like a resident. Okay. White Coat Investor is really, really common for saying that. White Coat Investor is a financial like coaching thing online. It's great resources, great stuff. And then he'll just say like, live like a resident for X amount of time. And then you can get anything you want. So there's another, Paula Pant is another financial mind out there. She's another CFP financial planner. And she has this saying that I love, and I'm going to steal here today. And it's, you'll be able to afford anything, but you can't afford everything, right? So you got to rack and stack your goals here. So I'm not saying, hey, you have to keep being frugal and you have to keep being poor, but you just need to prioritize whatever is yours, right? So for me, I don't want to be that frugal. So I won't reach some of my financial goals as fast as I could if I did stay frugal, because I'm at a point where now I want to live, right? So I want to do those things. Is it the best financial decision to do that? No. Is it the best mathematical decision to, I spent $170 on barbecue this weekend for 4 people, okay? That was a really good barbecue. We still got some I'm going to eat later, but is that a best financial decision? No. Was it amazing? Hell yeah. So sometimes you just got to rack and stack those. So it does suck that that's kind of the way you feel. And the only way around that is either to change that feeling, change that script and say, you know what, I'm not living frugal because I have to reach these goals. It's, I'm prioritizing paying off the debt first to give me that other stuff. But you don't want to do it so much because tomorrow's not promised. Today's already here, right? So we can't go all for the future. We still got to live a little bit today. So I know that doesn't solve anything, and this is the thing you're going to live through and you're going to have for a while. But just kind of the only tip there is like, just try to adjust that script to whatever works for you. But that's definitely something to stress about. Anybody else? Big financial stresses?
I would say my stress is seeing my 5-year goals and then also worrying about like the current financial burdens I have now. So like student loans, it sucks, they're awful. And I'd love to pay them all off in 6 years. But I also know if I pay them off in 6 years, I won't be able to afford what I want in 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what stresses me out, is how do you prioritize it to not disregard one, but yet be able to make both goals achievable?
Yeah. So kind of, I have all these goals, Robert, you just made me sit here and write all these goals. Some people sit down for like an hour and a half over like a bottle of wine to write down all the answers to these questions we talked about. Some people just kind of jot them down in a minute. Some people just listen to them live like today. But, you know, I have all these goals now. How do I make all these work? How do I play this financial Jenga to make sure I'm pulling the right pieces at the right time, that it doesn't all come toppling down? And there's no perfect answer for that, right? There's no perfect system to give you everything the best, right? Because the only thing you can't like mathematically control for the variable is the emotion you have towards things, right? If your student loans are a emotional burden for you and they keep you up at night, then yeah, we got to murder that. But if being in a home and having that secure place to live long term is important to you, then we got to do that. If, you know, growing your family, even though it's very expensive, is important, then you got to do that. So I can't give the perfect math there, and there's no special way around that. It's just kind of choosing what goals you want to prioritize, and then just getting as aggressive as possible towards those ones, but giving yourself the ability to adjust and change. You know, maybe right now you'd say, hey, I really want to pay off student loans. And Allison, this may affect you too. Maybe right now you say 5 years from now, I want to pay all this off. 3 years from now, your whole world changes. And now you're like, well, now I'm going to do something else, right? You got to have a little bit of flexibility there, or not. I mean, you can still murder them, but I don't have a good thing there either. It's just, how do you rack and stack them is just trying and then adjusting and going from there. So you'll start to figure it out, what's most important, because when you find, hey, you know, I got a little bit extra pay this month, you know, what do I put that towards? Sometimes it'd be like, ooh, this is going towards, you know, that new drill press that I needed. Dude, I knew like one woodworking tool. That was like the only thing I come up with. I got this new drill press that I really need. Like that's where you'll just feel natural to go there. Is it the best financial decision? No, because I have 6% on my student loans. I should be paying that off, but not everything has to be perfect, right? Hopefully the majority of you are going to be in a good enough situation where you're going to be successful, financially speaking, in the long term. When you get to that success point may vary depending on how you make your decisions in order, but you should all reach that point of success. Does that make sense? All right. I know I'm just saying words here, but hopefully something helps and something does something. But anybody else got any other financial stresses that they want to talk about?
Yeah, I guess to echo off the conversation, for me, being in residency, similar to what was mentioned, you know, we have this limited budget. So I struggle with, you know, okay, do I save $500 this month to put into something else? Or do I just take my whole salary and just live kind of, like you said, like a resident? Or, you know, I just struggle back and forth between, you know, how much do I really need to save at this point while I'm in this fixed income bucket?
That one's actually a cool one. So I don't know if I'm taking the right thing away from this, but I'm going to take a piece away from it real fast. So, you know, not knowing how much you should be doing at this early stage in life to get you towards those other things is kind of what I'm feeling that question is, or that statement is.
Yes.
Doing a residency is actually super cool from a financial planning perspective, right? So you're taking, hey, I made, you know, little or no money in school, and my end goal is to be a full-time pharmacist where I'm going to make pretty good money, right? So most full-time pharmacists that we work with are making somewhere in the like 110 to 130 range, right? That's kind of like where you're going to get to. So as a resident, you're probably going to make somewhere between like 40 and 70, right? So you kind of like, you're stepping into that. So you went from nothing to like 50 to then I'm going to get to like one something, like 110. And I think that's a really cool phase, because when you go from nothing to residency, right, that's going to feel like you have so much money. Like, even though it's not where your end goal is, because you had no money before, it's going to feel like you have all the money. And if you can learn to be comfortable in that lifestyle, then it'll be easier when you make that next jump, right? So then when you go from that 50 to 100 or whatever the numbers are, right? If you can avoid taking that entire step, right? So there's a term called lifestyle creep that I'm sure you've heard of, where as your salary goes up, your expenses go up. There's actually, we'll talk about this later on, but there's Parkinson's law that says work expands to fill the time available, right? So that means that If I have an assignment that's due next week, I will finish it next week. If I have to do something, when you were a kid, if I have to do something before my parents get home, I will do it when I hear their car hit the driveway, because that's how work expands. And the same thing happens with your budget. Parkinson's law would say that your expenses expand to fill the income available, right? So that's lifestyle creep. But when your salary or your residency ends and you go to a full-time position, we don't want to have a lifestyle leap, right? Lifestyle creep is one thing, but a lifestyle leap would be, I'm going from 50 to 100, I'm going to find $50,000 of new expenses to do with, right? That's what we want to avoid. So a really cool thing that I love seeing is when you make that jump, I don't want you to take all of it, right? I do want you to take some of it, right? So I normally would say a cool rule of thumb is like 50%. So learn to live like a resident. Don't do anything crazy if you're not trying to pay out everything your residency year. Don't try to, like, don't try to break anything. But when you go from resident to full time, take 50% of whatever that new money is, right? So I'm going to make an example. We're going to go from 50 to 100. So take $25,000 and live on, like, that's your lifestyle bump. That other $25,000, put that away. Like, take that goes towards paying down debt. That goes towards savings, like, right away. Like, you never knew it was there. When your salary goes from 50 to 75, you're going to feel like you have all the money in the world. This is $25,000 new dollars that you never felt before. So by saying you don't get to feel that other 25 is not going to hurt you. If I tell you you're going to make 100 and you live off 100, and then I say go back to 75, that would be hard. Cutting $25,000 out is difficult, but cutting 25 of a bonus is not, right? So that's a cool thing to do. You take that $25,000 and you put it towards something, whether it's student loans, you put it towards retirement. If that's your goal, you put it towards purchasing that new house. 2 years of that's $50,000 for a down payment. 4 years from that's $100,000 for a down payment. That's going to get you a house most places that are in San Francisco, San Diego, LA, or New York. So that's going to be great. And that's a really cool, you have that cool tool in your toolbox. So that there's a big jump coming after your residency that you can take advantage of. Does that make sense, or am I just talking in circles? I'm getting like half nods. Okay. So when you're in residency, kind of how much should you be doing? The big thing here is to understand how one thing impacts another. So I believe we decided the next topic is going to be student loans. So we're going to see how student loans are impacted by your income and how your income is impacted by retirement savings. So when you're in residency, you're not really going to have a lot of money to put towards retirement, right? But if you can put some money towards retirement, that will decrease what your student loan payments will be the following year. So then when you start racking and stacking your goals, and you see that if I do one, it gives me a positive impact on these other two, versus if I do this other one, it only helps one. That can start to help you decide which one I should be focusing on and which one I shouldn't. Does that make sense? I got a couple ahs. I don't know if anybody actually agreed. Okay. Thumbs up. I love the thumbs up. All right. So this is another cool one. This is along the same kind of thought process line here. Is if you were to fast forward the clock to 1 year from now, what would make you feel like you made significant progress in your finances and we're on track to success? Now, this one is really similar, right, to all these other questions we're talking about, but this one's 1 year is very easy to see. 1 year from now, next July, right? That's just next July. What would have to happen between now and then for you to say, yeah, I did a good job. I'm still on track. Hey, I did a thing. The worst thing for most people is to look back a year and say, I just wasted this whole time and I made no progress. But you won't know how much progress you're supposed to make unless you put a goalpost up. So a year from now, I want to have a solid budget in place that I do every month and I'm saving towards this goal. A year from now, I'll be done with my residency and I'll be making a new pharmacist if I'm only doing PGY1. I'll be at this point where I can get that big jump. So a year from now, if I'm saving 25% of my income, then I'm doing good. A year from now, if we're paying all our bills on time, then I'm doing good, right? It doesn't have to be a huge goal, but think about what that 1 year time frame should look like to make sure you're successful and significant progress with your finances and you're on the right track, right? All right. Now this is for y'all. So what's one thing that we have not discussed that we should? Obviously, as we go through these planning topics, we're going to discuss all kinds of deep discussions, but like what's something related to this? And by this, it's open to everything. But what's something important that you think that I should have touched on today that I didn't, if anything? Nothing. So I did a perfect job. I love it. As usual, that's what I expect. Okay, so kind of to wrap this up a little bit. We're a little over time. I'm going to stay for, we're not done if nobody wants to go yet, but schedule. So Steven, you weren't here, but last time we met, we decided to go from monthly to biweekly, right?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Cool. So when we switched to biweekly, I wanted to avoid Labor Day. So Labor Day is like right here. And if we stayed on the schedule of every 2 weeks from now, we would hit Labor Day, and I'm definitely not going to be here for Labor Day. So like, I don't know who would be talking with you. So to mess that, we do next week. So our next meeting would be the following Monday. And that one, we're going to talk about student loans. Does that kind of work for everybody who's here? If it doesn't work, then we'll record it just like I'm recording today, hopefully. Thanks for the thumbs up. I love those thumbs up. We'll record it just like we are today, and we'll talk about it. Now, with the student loan analysis, I think I'm gonna try something here. So what we're gonna do is Kim and I will send out instructions for everyone to pull down their NSLDS file. You don't have to write it down. We're gonna send you a link. So it's the National Student Loan Data System file. It is the file that states all your student loans that you have that are federal. And then you can pull down your credit report, and then I'll show you all your student loans that are private. Okay? What I want everyone to do is you're then going to respond to that email with your NSLDS file. Okay? So just the NSLDS. If you have private loans, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to help you on a personal basis. But the public loans, we're gonna look at everybody's, okay? We will put those in our system that will spit out a report that is going to be much prettier than that NSLDS file. And we will send that back to everyone. So that way, when I'm reviewing student loans, we'll all be looking at similar documents, but yours will have a different piece of data on it. Does that make sense? All right. If you don't send us the file, I can't send you back the file. And we're going to try to do all this in a week. So Kim, she didn't know about this until right now. This is going to work. It's probably going to be great. Does anybody have any issues with that other than Kim? Okay.
We can make it.
What's that?
I said we can make it.
We can make it work, yeah. So as always, now I'm going to open up to any kind of questions. So related first, unrelated, if not, what questions do we have today?
So we might talk about it next week, but in my head, one of my goals was trying to get my debt taken care of within the next 2 years, which I think is completely feasible. I'm roughly about $110,000 in debt. And if I keep living the lifestyle I'm living and like my tiny house and all that, like the plans, I feel like is very feasible. But if I'm also planning on trying to do a career with IHS, for example, is it worth trying to pay off all that debt right away, or is it worth trying to get that loan forgiveness?
Ooh, okay. So let me rephrase that. So you're saying, hey, I have a student loan debt that I feel like I can manage in the short term, but does it make more sense for me to go for forgiveness in the long run? Yeah? Okay. So the rule of thumb here is 1.5 debt to income. So if your debt is 1.5 or more times your expected income, then you should go for some sort of forgiveness. Okay. Now, if you don't work in the public service sector, you can't do public service, but you are going to work in the public service sector. So you could go for public service, which would mean 10 years of making payments to get it back. So if you have less than 1.5, you're probably better off just trying to pay it off and being aggressive, because it gives you the freedom beyond that, right? It gives you the options to do whatever you want. If you go for forgiveness, you have to stay in public service for those 10 years. If you don't know that you want to stay in public for those service for those 10 years, because you may want to be travelaholic hippie who just lives in her little house and travels around the country, stays in national parks. Who knows? I'm just totally making stuff up. But like that gives you the options to do that. So if that's something that you can feasibly do, then that's where I would say, unless your income is going to be less than 1.5 times your debt. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Who else has got a question? This is anything you want to talk about now. This is honestly my favorite part of calls. Now you make me sad. Nothing? Well, that's fair too.
Oh, I had something actually.
Okay.
I think it was mentioned the last meeting. So I didn't make it. Ended work early, and I was taking my Naplex the next day, so I was not wanting to do anything that night. But I was curious with. I think you mentioned like if you. So I do have the opportunity to buy stock at a discount, even as a resident. I was wondering if you were gonna touch on that, like in future meetings, or if you just had like general advice on that, or it doesn't have to be now. I was just curious if that was gonna be touched on.
Yeah, I don't know if we are going to cover on ESOPs. So what he's describing here is an ESOP, or an employee stock option plan or stock purchase plan, depending on where you work. So an ESPP, employee stock purchase plan, allows you to, from your payroll, so from your paycheck, you're able to directly purchase shares of the company that you work in, and you get a cool discount normally. So normally the way it works is there's a window, and the discount that you receive is either the share price, meaning the value of that stock, either when the window starts or the window ends, whichever one is lower, you get that price, and then possibly even a deeper discount to purchase, right? So let's say I worked at CVS, and the way the plan works is I get to purchase directly from my paycheck. I can purchase, 3% per year, which would mean 3% of your salary can be used towards purchasing these shares. And they come at a 10 to 15% discount, meaning I get it and I can immediately sell it and I can earn back 10 to 15%, right? Those are really cool tools if you're able to use them, right? So if you have the funds available in your budget to cut out 2 or 3% or whatever your limit is through your employer, those are phenomenal tools because you can sell it right away and earn that change. You just have to be aware of the tax differences.
And is that the general strategy? I've never done it before, where so you purchase with the discount and then you sell. Is that the strategy, or
yeah, that's generally
you don't hold on to the stocks?
So some people will. So some people will hold on to the shares for long term, but it goes both ways. So if you think that the share prices are going to continue to rise, that's just you investing in your company then. So if you're doing it as a form of like salary adjustments, then you're basically just saying, here's 2 or 3%, and I'm going to sell it right away. I take the hit on any of the taxes that I'm going to pay, but I'm going to get a discount, so I'm okay. If not, then I hold it for a long period of time and I sell it whenever I need it. So that's really going to be like individual specific on the general practice. But if you kind of look up, because ESPPs are really common in like the tech world. So if you look into those things, there's going to be great resources online on the best ways to manage ESPPs. CVS specifically has one. Some of the other chain pharmacies have that. So it's definitely something that a lot of people are going to be dealing with. So I don't know that we're going to cover it in depth. If we do, it would be during the investments discussion. So remind me then, and maybe we can go a little deeper.
Cool. Thank you.
That's cool though. Yeah. Anybody else got anything for today? You're just waving goodbye. Okay, then I guess Allison decided that we're done. No, that's
you guys
great.
stay on. I have to go. It's my bedtime, and I have to be up early tomorrow. So
No, that's all right. It's only 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So.
I'm on the East Coast.
I get it. So,
thank you.
All right, so y'all have a wonderful evening. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I'll stay on here until everybody's gone. So if anybody has any personal questions they want to ask, I'll be here. If not, we will see you next week, August 3rd. And we'll talk about student loans. So have a good night.